Right, good evening to everyone. Welcome to the Wokingham Borough Council Planning Committee meeting. Just before we actually get onto the formal agenda, I do have sort of an introduction that I do every month. The committee know it well, but obviously we've got some new people in the audience tonight. We've got the PA system, so hopefully you can all hear me. Mobile phones should be off or on silent, and there is no fire drill planned. The proceedings are filmed and will be available on the WBC website. You will see from the camera position that the committee members, council officers and registered speakers will be recorded, but speakers may ask not to be filmed, but their comments will be audio recorded. The planning committee is made up of 9 elected members, and I'll ask each member just to introduce themselves by saying their name and the ward which they represent. I'll start over there on the right.
Chris Barry, member for Hamilton's ward in Wokingham.
Wayne Smith, member for Hurst.
Michelle Shepperton-Benn, member for Winnish.
Malcolm Richards, member for Norwich in Wokingham.
John Kaiser, member for Barkham and deputy chairman.
Tim Holtman Hawkton, which is Lower Early, RC chairman.
Bill Stonewall, member for Loddon in Woodley.
Philip Holsworth, member for Winnish.
Michael Fermier, member for Alton Ward in Lower Early.
Thank you, members. And the planning officers, we are supported and advised by a variety of professional council officers. And now I'll ask those to introduce themselves, starting on my far right.
Good evening, my name is Mary Severy and I'm the solicitor advising the committee this evening.
My name is Arabella Yandel, I'm the clerk to the committee.
I'm Justin Turby, lead officer for development management, here to advise committee.
I'm Chris Easton, service manager for Highways, also advising on highways matters.
The planning officers presenting tonight's applications are sat at the side over there, and they will introduce themselves at the appropriate time. This is a quasi-judicial committee with formal set procedures and conduct. Firstly, the planning officer will present each application. Then I will call in turn only those who have pre-registered to speak. Please come forward to the table. The microphone is controlled by the grey button on the base. And there is a time limit for each category of speaker, and this will be strictly enforced. So please ensure you get your key points across within your allotted time. Members of the committee are interested in the quality of what you have to say and not for how long you actually speak for. I emphasise that only those who are pre-registered to speak may speak. No others, including town or parish councillors, agents, applicants, objectors or supporters, are permitted to address the committee, ask questions or interrupt the meeting. Following the planning officer's presentation and the comments of registered speakers, the planning committee members will consider, question and seek clarification for the application and hopefully reach a decision which may or may not agree with the planning officer's recommendation. Finally, a reminder, the local planning authority's role is to determine any valid planning application using local and national planning policy. Our role is not to suggest alterations to schemes, whether they are a good idea or needed, whether they are too costly or whether there are alternative uses. Thank you very much, and I'll move on to tonight's agenda. The first item is apologies, but looking around I can see I have a full number of members on the committee, so there are none. Now, in the minutes of the previous meeting, are there any alterations? Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 10, first paragraph, could I request that my colleague Rochelle's names spelled correctly and caps that are inserted?
Yeah, I'm sure we can manage that. Thank you. And if there are no others, please have a show of hands that we're happy with the minutes. Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Michael?
Yeah, thank you. Oh, sorry. First, excuse me, I'm new to this committee. Yeah, there are just a couple of things actually. As an early town councillor, I made a decision on a consultation response to Wokingham Borough Council on the application for item number 107. I'd like it to be clear to everyone, Chairman, that this does not create a conflict with my role on the planning committee, and I've not made up my mind on the decision before us tonight. In respect of item 103, I did not attend the meeting of the planning committee of early town council. Thank you.
Actually, it was very remiss of me, Michael. Welcome to the planning committee. As you say, this is your very first one, so welcome.
Thank you.
Are there any applications to be deferred or withdrawn?
Madam Chair.
Okay. I'm just meant to remind members that it is being filmed in the council chamber, so when you do speak, please speak up into the microphone. I know you normally do, but I was just asked to remind people. Right, first application then is agenda item 103 on page 15, which is the Orpington School on Silverdale Road. This is a full application for the demolition of external stores, swimming pool and temporary classrooms, followed by the erection of a 2-storey teaching block, provision of a mugger and extension to car park and cycle parking. It is before the committee as it's a major application and the council is the applicant. The recommendation is slightly different from what's usual, that it is to consult the Secretary of State if minded to approve. The officer, during her presentation, will explain that to members. We did go on site visit on Friday, so we well know what the site's like. And the case officer is Pooja Kumar, who I'm going to hand over to.
Thank you, Chairman. Orpington School is located in a predominantly residential area of Early. However, in the immediate area outside the site, there are a number of different uses, including retail, residential, and the adjacent Maiden Early School. The proposed 2-storey teaching block would be located to the rear of the original building on the footprint of an existing cluster of classrooms, hard surface playing area, and the swimming pool. The mugger or multi-use games area would be located to the rear of the field, adjacent to the school playing field and running track. The proposed elevations depict the increased height of the extension. The new hall would be the tallest element of the extension with a ridge height of 8.1 metres. The bottom elevation will be the proposed view from the nearest residential properties along Lancaster Gardens. The proposed floor plans identify that 2 classrooms would be impacted from the location of the teaching block. One would be a music room and the other would be a Year 1 or Year 2 classroom. To ensure adequate daylight and ventilation, the proposal would retain the walls and the windows in the existing south elevation, and it proposes to install roof lights. Here we have 3D visualisations of the site from Maiden Early, which is located to the east of the site. The top one is the existing site and the bottom is the proposed site with the extension. In respect of character, the existing building is a single-storey 1960s build with little architectural value. The proposed extension, by virtue of the increase in ridge height by 5.1 metres, would allow for a part brick, part rendered building, which would be visually more interesting than the current elevation treatment. Moreover, the proposal would result in a reduction of built footprint on site by 51 square metres. The proposed teaching block would maintain a distance of 28 metres from the site's western boundary with residential properties. It is considered that this distance would not have an adverse impact in terms of loss of light and overbearing, and although there will be an increase in the ridge height, the 2 first-floor side-facing windows would not result in any harmful overlooking, as these would serve the double-height new hall. Usually for residential properties, the back-to-back distance required is approximately 22 metres. The early learning years classrooms and outdoor play area would be relocated to the west of the site, and therefore noise objections have been received by neighbours. This element of the proposal does not require planning permission, as the site is an approved school and outdoor play areas can be relocated at any time without planning permission. Moreover, environmental health officers have not raised any objections in respect of noise. A number of objections have been received on the basis of parking, highway safety and congestion. The site is accessed from an unnamed road which is shared with Maiden Early School. The site has on-site parking provision for staff, which currently does not meet the borough's parking standards. In respect of the extension, it would require a provision of 6 additional vehicle parking spaces on site. However, the applicant is providing 12 additional spaces. As a result of the proposal, the shortfall of parking spaces would only amount to 5 spaces, which could be accommodated on site, but this would need to be negotiated with the applicant through the travel plan, which is conditioned as condition 11 of the officer's recommendation. A number of issues relating to highways and parking relate to problems which are outside of the red line boundary of the school site. Aldrington and Maidenhead schools currently have no travel plan in place. However, by way of condition 11 of the officer's recommendation, there could be a travel plan agreed on for both the schools to implement measures to improve accessibility, congestion and parking in the wider area. The applicant proposes to replace the tree and shrub which would be lost as a result of the proposed works. Additional planting and tree protection measures are secured by ways of conditions 4, 6 and 7 of the officer's recommendation. Sport England have maintained their objection on the proposed irregular size of the mugger and loss of the swimming pool. When looking through design guidance on Sport England's website, the proposed mugger would be able to accommodate basketball, netball, cricket and tennis for the primary school. However, it would not be able to accommodate football and hockey. The proposed playing field adjacent to the mugger would be readily available for football and hockey. In respect of the swimming pool, it is an outdoor swimming pool used only for part of the year. There are local leisure centres within the area with swimming pools at Loddon Valley and Broadmesh Leisure Centres. Moreover, Loddon Junior further along Silverdale Road also has a swimming pool on site which could be used by community groups and or pupils. In coming to the planning balance, it must be noted that although it is unfortunate that the swimming pool will be lost, having an on-site swimming pool is not a compulsory requirement for primary schools. In addition to this, although travelling to local leisure centres would take time and further resources, this is common practice. The proposed mugger would allow for year-round use of an area of playing field which would be benefit to pupils of the school and other community groups and summer clubs. The applicant has demonstrated that there is a need of the catchment area for Aldrington also. Turning to the members' update, there is clarification on the number of objections per topic area and additional information on the parking spaces approved at Tesco's and the catchment areas for early schools. There has also been an amendment proposed to condition 9 to include hours within which deliveries shall not be made to the site. Additional information on the staggered opening hours is also included. As Sport England's objection has been maintained, if members are minded to approve, then members would resolve to consult the Secretary of State on the application and supporting papers in accordance with paragraphs 9 and 10 of the Town and Country Planning Direction 2009 and grant planning permission provided 1. The Secretary of State does not call the application in for determination, or 2. The period within which the Secretary of State may respond under paragraph 11 of the Town and Country Planning Direction 2009 expires. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the first registered speaker then is William Luck from Borough Town Council.
Good evening. My name is Bill Luck. I'm the early town councillor of the ward in which the school is located. I'm here tonight to explain the concerns that led to the Town Council Planning Committee's decision regarding this application. While we are cognizant of the problems with school places in Early, we were not convinced that the issues of traffic and parking had been adequately addressed in this application, and the perceived inadequacies of the transport statement accompanying it. Paragraph 35 and 36 of the MPPF identify that all developments which generate significant amounts of movement should be required to provide a travel plan, which does not get included in this application. The Council's Core Strategy Policy 6 proposes that permission will be granted to applications which, among other criteria, achieve the following: improvements to the infrastructure, which there appear to be none; provide appropriate parking, however the scheme proposes less on-site parking than the appropriate standard; mitigate any adverse effects on the road network, which there do not appear to be any. There are two documents forming part of the current application that deal with traffic. The first of these is the Design Access Statement, which identifies that for a two-form elementary school, the parking standard for staff would require 37 spaces, yet the applicant is proposing 31, based only on the increase in pupil numbers. But elsewhere in the application, it is highlighted that an existing parking shortfall already gives rise to double parking in the on-site sub-car park. It seems the opportunity could have been taken to address the existing shortfall. The second is a transport statement, which proposes that a school travel plan be prepared and that mitigation measures are proposed, but neither are included with the application. These elements are fundamental to understanding what the impact of this development would be before making any decision, and should therefore be included in the application. The transport statement also seeks to analyse the potential parking capacity in the area. However, whilst this document appears to identify that, in general terms, parking spaces can be achieved on both sides of various roads, private land and in restricted highways areas, the document does not identify where the claimed parking spaces are specifically located, so it's impossible to assess. However, coincidental parking on opposite sides of any of the local roads would lead to obstruction of the highway, and parking on third party without permission and in restricted highways areas surely should not be considered. It is believed this planning committee should not accept the transport statement without a definitive assessment of parking and with questions over the suitability of the identified general areas for parking. Parking survey of the school itself shows that 25% of pupils and 61% of staff travel to the school by car. Transport statement goes on to suggest that, as a means of mitigating the traffic problems, these numbers could be reduced to 5.4% of pupils and 24.4% of staff. It gives no strategy for achieving this. This will be where a travel plan will be critical to achieving the claimed potential reductions in traffic and parking. Whilst much is made of the tight catchment area and its suitability for walking, it does not address the reality of parents who need to drop off children on their way to work. In conclusion, it is suggested that this planning committee should not approve this application until such time as the revised plan for on-site parking, providing 37 spaces, is received, a more detailed transport statement has been submitted, identifying definitive parking capacity in terms of actual spaces, and a travel plan has been provided, considered and agreed, demonstrating how the reductions in car travel and parking need can be achieved and monitored. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Right, next I have Ian Head, the Chair of Governors, Hannah Seelam and Michael Gordon.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, have you decided how you're splitting up the time? Because between you have 6 minutes, which is say it's double than what we normally do. Okay.
I'm Ian Head, Chair of Governors. We will respect the planning remit of the committee by not commenting on the lack of additional school places with reference to paragraph 72 of the MPPF. However, as governors, we're legally bound to ensure the health and safety and well-being of pupils at the school we represent, that they are not compromised in any way. And as such, we wish to add our strong concerns in respect of traffic, parking and safety in the area around Aldrington. The traffic statement commissioned by the LA is flawed, and as it stands, greatly overestimates the residual parking capacity, nor does it acknowledge the unique nature of the site. Surplus parking capacity has been evidenced on the basis that cars can be parked on both sides of surrounding streets. This is not possible without blocking the highway. This inaccuracy alone suggests that up to 50% of the capacity cited in the document does not exist. Some roadways labelled as unrestricted parking are incorrectly categorised, being either private land or inaccessible at peak times. Irrespective of the expansion issue, work should be initiated by the Council to make the area safer, particularly following the recent serious accident that involved 2 of Aldrington's pupils. In the past years, we've invited highways to view the issues of access and safety of the 2 schools' entrance, and on each occasion they've been unable to offer any mitigating provisions. The transport statement does not take into account the current increase in pupils being transported by car, nor does it fully acknowledge the impact a further 105 pupils would have, with many living further from the school. And we dispute the mitigating impact of any travel plan and note the absence of this key document of the planning application as per PPG 13, para 88. Aldrington is a very unique position in that it shares an extremely congested site with a large secondary school, public library and preschool. The secondary school is due to increase its sixth form intake in the coming years, which will further add to the foot and vehicular traffic attracted to the site. There's a public right-of-way running through the site, which is served by one vehicular access. The main entrance point is fronted by the parade of shops associated with shoppers' traffic and new Tesco Express store, which will further increase the traffic in the area, as acknowledged by councillors Chopping and Mile while speaking of the Tesco planning application on traffic and safety grounds at the planning meeting on the 6th of January 2016. The transport statement before you is the second such document, the first being rejected by the council. And we argue that this too should be rejected as it is fundamentally flawed and not the basis on which such key decisions should be made.
Michael Gordon. I am speaking as a resident of Lancaster Gardens and a parent of 2 and live nearest to the school site. The major concern for residents are increased traffic, pedestrian safety, the overbearing two-storey design and raised noise levels from the 30% increase in pupils. I strongly believe that the transport statement reflects an unrealistic parking capacity, which is demonstrated in the slides, which shows it's not possible to park on both sides of the roads while still maintaining vehicle and emergency services access. It also states that Lancaster Gardens, where I live, can accommodate 18 parked cars. We believe 11 is an optimistic number. These are just two examples of the many flaws we've identified in the statement. Residents have also highlighted traffic as a huge concern. They state blocked pavements, driving on pavements and chaos in the front of the Silverdale Road Parade are some of the major issues, and we feel the situation will only worsen should the planning application be granted and add to an already unacceptable level of risk for our children and our community.
Hannah Selman. As an Aldrington parent, I am deeply concerned about a number of discrepancies in the Planning Officers Committee report. The loss of the swimming pool contravenes clause 74 of the MPPF. The applicant has failed to clearly show that it is surplus to requirements and has also not proven that it will be replaced by equivalent or better provision in terms of quantity or quality. There is no other outdoor pool within the local area which is accessible to the Aldrington community. As contrary to the committee report, the pool at Loddon, which is considerably smaller, will not be able to accommodate our extensive level of usage in addition to their own needs. The loss of the pool contravenes clause 70 of the MPPF, which calls on planning decisions to guard against the unnecessary loss of valued facilities, and is in direct opposition to the planning officer's statement that the alterations would not result in any harm to the usage of the site. And should the pool be demolished, it would also contravene clause 73 of the MPPF, which recognises that opportunities for sport and recreation can make an important contribution to the health and well-being of communities. Sport England have also objected to the proposal, as the mugger is an irregular size with insufficient runoff space. On closer examination of Sport England's 2015 design requirements, it does not actually meet governing body overall space requirements for basketball, cricket, mini soccer, hockey, netball or tennis. England Hockey even advise runoffs must be the same playing surface as the principal playing area. This is in contrast to the committee report, which states, in respect of runoff, it is therefore considered that it may not be essential to have a runoff area, as pupils can use the adjacent playing field. This leaves me seriously questioning the value of the mugger and has rightly led to a statutory consultative objection.
So therefore, in conclusion, it is therefore vital that the Planning Committee do not overlook the unique factors in play in respect to this application. There's no comparable site in Wokingham, and to approve this application is to accept an increased risk to users, something that Early Town Council, Aldrington School and the local community are not prepared to accept, and we therefore ask you to reject this ill-conceived application in its entirety. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next we have Catherine Mitchell, a resident. You'll be speaking for 3 minutes.
Yeah. My name is Catherine Mitchell and I'm one of the parents who lives in the Aldrington catchment and was unsuccessful in securing a place at the school for a September 2015 start. I represent a number of parents who are also in the same position who attend with me tonight. We campaigned hard for a review of the Council's outdated primary school strategy, which are clear forecast gaps for early. We wanted to share with you our experiences and views that support the proposed expansion plans. I completely respect the views of the parents who are working hard to protect the best interests of their children who are currently at school. Like them, I hugely care about my children's education, and like them, I want to be able to have the best schooling that can possibly be provided under the state system. I'm also presuming that, like them, they wanted their children to attend a local community school. But they wanted them to be able to go on play dates with their classmates who live maybe a few doors down. And they wanted their children to be able to continue their secondary education with some familiar faces from primary school. But unfortunately for us, those choices were taken away from us on April the 16th, 2015. Now that date is ingrained in my memory, as I was stunned to read that we had not been offered a place at Aldrington, despite living just 0.327 miles away. This is where our 23-month campaign for local school places for early children began. Despite completing all the choices in a logical manner, we were diverted to the nearest school with available places 3 miles away. That's about 3,000 unnecessary miles driving every year. Amazing considering that we have 6 primary schools and under 1.5 miles from our house. It was absolutely heartbreaking explaining to my 4-year-old why he couldn't scoot to school with his friends and why we had to travel by car. And it's upsetting explaining to him why his new friends couldn't come to his house, but we would have to make a 9-mile round trip for play dates. The personal stresses to all our families is immense. This is not only about our children's education, but the travelling affects our livelihoods and increased travel costs that none of us had anticipated. There seems to be considerable speculation about what's caused this problem as the surge of fraudulent applications and consequent places that were offered. And I think this is grossly misleading. I'm not saying that there aren't some children there under false pretences, but this is not what is causing the increase. The increase is because we live in an area that's attracted to bring children up in with excellent schools. And as original homeowners move out, we see more families with young children move in to the school places. And that data is incredibly hard for all the council teams to track, as it's not a static number and is constantly changing with every single house move or rental. Now I know that many of the concerns relate to traffic. Loddon school places will fill, and if Aldrington does not expand, then the children who have missed out on places will be travelling by the car on the very roads that are being referred to. And that can mean an extra 105 cars on the road if the school doesn't expand. Also, many of us work for a living, and so consequently, this may mean that we need to drive in the car and drop our children off on the way to work. That is the reality of life for every single primary in the country. As the Aldrington plans show, the school will benefit from enhanced and new teaching facilities that they can use all year round. And we think these new facilities will considerably benefit the education of the children for many years to come.
If you can wind up, please.
Every child should have equal opportunities. This is not just about the current Aldrington children, it's about every child that's under the age of 4 living in Aldrington catchment now and in the future. Your forward-thinking decision affects our community for probably the next 20 years and goes way beyond those who are currently at the school. This decision is your council's legal and moral obligation, and it's your legacy.
Right. We now have peers running from Wokingham Borough Council.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I am Piers Brunning from Children's Services, and I'm coming to talk in support of this application. I would like to talk to you about 4 key issues. They are why it's important we're able to deliver additional primary places, that Aldrington is the reasonable choice for expansion in the area, how transport impacts can be managed, and how the school will be able to still be able to deliver an outstanding education. The ability to increase the number of school places in early is important because demand has risen. Children have missed out on a local school place and are now driven to schools in other areas. 2015, 30 children had to be placed outside the area. In 2016, with 30 additional places at Loddon, the number of diverts greatly reduced. But there were no reception places left for families that continue to move to the area, as older households are replaced by young families. School expansion, ideally, is best planned for before these children arrive and not as a hurried reaction to the number of actual applicants. Aldrington was chosen after a task and finish group of members, officers and local residents looked at the needs and opportunities in early. 2 schools were put forward for expansion, Loddon and Aldrington primary schools, to provide the 45 new primary school places per year that were judged to be required, having considered a range of factors related to the delivery of education and the impacts on the local community. Aldrington had seen a marked increase in demand from within its own admissions designated area. The proposed increased capacity would closely match the number of children who couldn't be admitted to the school despite living in the area in 2015 and 2016. School run traffic is undoubtedly a significant issue, but Aldrington is popular, so we expect additional children will live within walking distance. Mitigation opportunities have been identified, including a walking bus and staggered start and finishes times. This mitigation will be developed to satisfy planning consent conditions. And at the same time, we will be reviewing on-street parking controls. After expansion, the school site area would be comparable to many good and outstanding schools nationally, so we see no reason why education standards should be compromised. We appreciate, of course, that the school's much valued swimming pool will be lost, but as has been pointed out, there are other local facilities. But conversely, the school will gain a new large hall, teaching block with classrooms built to modern acoustic and environmental standards, an IT suite, and a new multi-use games area to supplement the retained grass playfields. So in summary, I hope the committee can support a proposal that ensures the council can deliver primary school places' early needs in a satisfactory location with realistic proposals for traffic mitigation, and which will give the school the facilities it needs to continue to offer an outstanding education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, our final presenters that we have registered are the ward members. We've got David Choppin and Ken Marl. Would you both like to come up? You two can manage your 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a joint presentation with the voices that are, here mine's croaky. Well, here we go.
My voice is almost completely. Is it okay for David to do my part?
That'd be all right. You can make a note.
Good evening, members. This evening you're being asked to consider plans for the expansion of Aldington School. Not the expansion of the catchment area, but a modernisation and enlargement of the actual school buildings, so that more places can be made available to pupils, predominantly from within the existing catchment area. It is perhaps worth taking the time to set the scene a little. Much has been said about the risk of damaging the performance of an outstanding primary school, the restricted site, the loss of the swimming pool, and theoretical increases in traffic levels and parking. Maiden Early is the largest ward in Early with 3 main primary schools. The Aldington catchment covers a restricted area only. This is the smallest school and is only half the size of either of the other 2. You will also be aware of the adjoining Maiden Early Academy, which has its own extensive on-school parking, and have also been advised as to the sensible way that these 2 schools cooperate by staggering school times at both the end and the beginning of the day. In my 26 years as a town councillor and 14 as a borough councillor, hardly a year has gone by without a phone call from a distraught parent saying that they live within the designated catchment for Aldington but cannot get a place. Calls increased with the massive shortfall of primary school places that was identified 2 years ago. Initially, there were believed to be some 30 families that fell within the distraught category. Meetings then took place which were much more distressing than ever before. It was out of this situation that the local campaign to expand the school numbers developed. You've heard from some of those campaigners this evening. These people will not get their own children into the school if it is expanded, but want to help those who would otherwise lose out. They've been working with officers so that others avoid the nightmare they suffered. I've been arguing for years that this school should consider expansion to meet the needs of the residents within its catchment area. Whether that is possible has always depended on a number of factors, mainly funding, planning and demand. This application clearly states that if the demand is not confirmed over the next couple of sessions, then the actual building works will not take place. However, without planning consent, nothing else can happen. So, from the point of view of those campaigning for the school to expand, this is their final hurdle. Locally, opinions are split. Much has been said about the possible increase in traffic. This has been portrayed in a way that an extra 105 children might result in up to 105 car movements, which is very misleading. Perhaps there will be no extra movements at all. There will be 4 or 5 extra teacher movements based on standard numbers, but there will also be fewer parents driving their children to Sonning, Woodley or Winnish. The catchment area is very small and all the designated homes are within reasonable walking distance. The year before last, any new family seeking to obtain a place for their first child but living more than 0.2 of a mile from the school could not obtain a place. Children who were in the preschool also missed out on a place in the main school, as the changing demographics resulted in families moving into the area, but living closer to the school than they did, and rightly taking priority. Repeated, this would exclude many hundreds of homes from the effective catchment every year, unless the school is extended, resulting in yet more car journeys. Also, each year there has been no space for what is known as in-year entries. Why the increase in demand? Well, as my generation downsize, our houses are generally sold to a family with children of school age. These do not show on the current statistics, which are based on birth rate, etc. Indeed, just walking from my home to the shops today, I was aware of 4 houses currently undergoing renovation. This could mean 3 or 4 applications in coming months, which are outside those statistics, and with no in-year entry, where will they go to school and who will drive them? Early Town has also had a policy of an early place for every early child in a local school, and has supported a policy of walking to school, something shared by most responsible parents. The Town Council Planning Committee have raised a number of points at the request of parents, mainly relating to traffic issues, specifically the number of staff parking spaces and the theory of on-street parking locally. At present, there is a shortfall in on-site car parking, as this council has correctly increased requirements since the school was opened. The proposal will add enough spaces to meet the extra need and even reduce that shortfall. As I understand the situation, there could be up to another 5 spaces provided on top of this number with the cooperation of the school. Thus, I support the requirement for a condition around transport. The proposal will not result in dozens of parents driving their children to the school, as the increase in places will be taken up from within the catchment area. It is worth reiterating that last year, if you lived more than 0.22 of a mile from the school, if you had no special education needs nor a sibling at the school, you would not get a place. I don't want to see a recurrence of this. Taking the time to speak to residents as I do, I am aware of the strong anti-expansion feeling of those with children at the school, and the almost despair of parents whose children are excluded. My job, our job, is to represent all the residents, not just the few. The officers who have considered this application on a professional basis and have done an excellent job and have recommended approval. On this occasion, we 3 elected members support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Get your voice back, Ken. So thank you, councillors. Right, before I open it up to members, I'll just obviously picked up a number of points that were made by the presenters. I'm just going to ask the officers to respond on them, and if I haven't picked them all up and there are other things you want to add, then please do. In no particular order, I've got the travel plan. Not enough car parking. The parking in the local roads and being on both sides of the road. The overbearing of the 2-storey building. The loss of the swimming pool. The size of the mugger. And I would just like some clarification on what the furthest away pupil that got into the school is, or what it was. That wasn't one sibling, if you follow what I mean. Thank you. Either of you leaders?
Yep. Evening. I think just picking up on the points you just mentioned, local parking, not enough parking on site, and obviously the travel ban, I think they're the 3 key that came out from the majority of people. I think in terms of the application in front of us, we need to look at that itself, which is the expansion. The expansion includes 4 permanent staff and 4 part-time staff, and the council's parking standards equates to parking 1 space per full-time equivalent staff member. In that essence, 6 spaces have been proposed. Through working with the applicant, the application team, we've identified the location where further parking can be located. Granted, it's only 6 additional spaces, but that helps to bring the existing parking up to an extent. There is further ability to increase parking on site a little bit further, which can be monitored through the travel plan, or obviously work with the head teacher by relocation of the bin store and a few tweaks on site. But as it stands, the application complies with the council's parking standards by achieving the 6 for the staff, but obviously there is the additional. The parking on the local roads, I have to admit, the pictures we saw from the residents, I haven't seen that type of parking before, and in all honesty, it seems
that's
like
the common.
That's what's proposed.
It's not suggested.
That's what's in the transport statement.
This is the officer, please.
In terms of the photos you've shown, that is obviously an enforcement issue that obviously needs to take place in terms of the police, because that's an obstruction of public highway. In terms of what's happening there, I can't comment. I've never seen that from site visits. It wasn't seen obviously on the members' site tour on Friday. And obviously having a look at that, I know obviously some people made reference to Friday not being the best day to undertake a site visit because it was quieter, but actually on Friday is potentially the worst day because it's the morning of the early school has a wider opening time, and therefore there was a clash. So on Friday, for example, you get ordering to school between 8:50 and 9, and Maiden Early on Friday between 8:40 and 9:20. So in some respects, you would say that Friday was potentially the worst day for a site visit because there was a bigger clash of the opening times. In terms of the information contained in the report, appreciate where you have mentioned that the capacity on those roads may not be as they suggested. What the council has done in reviewing the application is not take it as in the capacity available, but it's enabled us to obviously understand the demand that actually is taking place. So in terms of the Lancaster Gardens, which was made reference to, saying there was 18, total capacity of 18 spaces. Now, I can't comment, haven't been out there and measured the curves to see if that can or can't take place. But in terms of the surveys that are undertaken, we did ask the applicants to break those surveys down further to by road, so we understood. From looking at the parking accumulation, it does make reference to curbside and restricted parking, so obviously any illegal and any that could take place. Now, the surveys that are undertaken on any given day, on the survey day, indicates that obviously in the evening peak there were obviously some curbside parking and 1 or 2 illegal spaces, but at the worst time for the total demand through that survey there was only 5 that were counted on that survey day in the PM peak and school PM peak, and in the AM peak there was only 7 which were identified for the total demand, and at that point there was none legally parked. So we have that information. That information would be used to help produce the travel plans so we understand the demand that's there. Neither school, as Bruce just mentioned, currently have a travel plan. The council has tried to work.
They do. The school do have a travel plan. Thank you.
Yes.
That's due very early.
Okay. Well, in terms of its update then, the advice I got from our travel plan, the school travel plan coordinator advised obviously there wasn't an up-to-date one, and therefore the ability we have here is to obviously update that and work. If there is one, then I appreciate that, and this gives us the ability to advance that further. The reason the conditions in there, I appreciate the bits you've mentioned about MPPF and the requirement for a travel plan. In this sense, the size of the scheme doesn't trigger the requirement for a transport assessment, and therefore it's a transport statement that's been undertaken, and therefore we've conditioned the travel plan, and it makes sense to have the school ready to be occupied so we can understand how the school's going to operate and run and work with the school to develop it further. One last thing just to mention as well is that in later on this year the council is obtaining CPE powers, which is criminal parking enforcement. Currently parking enforcement is down to the police, and it's very difficult for any resident to call the police and for them to turn up and enforce because it doesn't happen. The council will obviously have a team, and late autumn into later on this year, CPE will be enforced, and there'll be a dedicated team which can be called upon to go around and enforce the yellow lines and zigzags outside schools, and obviously to monitor and maintain this type of thing. Hope that helps provide some clarity.
On the overbearing size of the proposed extension, it's a 2-storey extension. There are 2-storey dwellings in the local area. The shopping parade that has residential accommodation above is 3 storeys, and the adjacent school at Maiden Early has 2-storey buildings. That, including the landscaping around the boundaries, which is being maintained, and also the fact that the distance between the nearest residential boundary to the proposed teaching block would be 28 metres. It's not considered that it would have any harmful overbearing impact. In respect of the size of the mugger, I think what's been picked up is there are various sizes within Sport England's design guidance. Some of them include runoff areas, some are perfect pitch size, some of them include runoff for sporting teams and for other members of teams to be standing in. The school is a primary school and they're not going to be playing professional sports, this is going to be sports used for the school. All of the children are young children under the age of 11 and 12, so it doesn't seem on balance that the need for a fully sized mugger would be required, although it would be helpful, and we do have the adjacent field that can be used by larger teams, and if, let's say, there are older children during summer groups, that field is available for them to use. But the mugger in terms of the basketball, netball, cricket and netball teams that I'd identified, that is the perfect pitch size, and the mugger would accommodate the perfect pitch size.
And swimming pool. The loss of swimming pool.
Again, I think through the objections it was identified that there was a number of other users of the swimming pool which weren't identified by the applicant at the stage the application was made. However, there are other swimming pools in the local area. I am aware that the applicant's already speaking to Loddon Valley Leisure Centre to see whether there's capacity to provide the curriculum at Loddon Valley so that there's no harm to the education of the children. In respect of the wider uses, it is an unfortunate loss, and you know, that's a loss that the application proposes.
Right, and then there was just my last question was how far away was the furthest child that was permitted to go to the school under the catchment area? Because Councillor Chopping did say a figure, but I just wanted it clarified. Piers, could you answer that question? No?
I don't know if it mate. What I would say, though, is that the normal figure we quote is the furthest distance in the last category, and reality would be that children with siblings, which are in a higher priority category, would come anywhere within the designated area.
Thank you. Right, I need to open up to members then. So I've got Michelle, Michael, Willett, and Malcolm. Michelle.
I have several questions. My first question is, you have a first floor building, you're building with the first floor in it, why don't you have a lift in it? British Disability Act requires you to have a lift for anything, so we can actually have handicapped people working, and also for students who may want to go up to the first floor, and it's a necessity according to the Act. It's not, you prefer to have them carried up or something?
Do you want to hear the answer?
Okay. Next, let's see. Swimming pool. I'm not quite sure how often you're actually going to be swimming outdoors in Britain, unless you're expecting climate change to significantly affect Britain and raise the average temperature by 10 degrees a year. I have a couple of other questions. As far as the size of the mugger, I think the idea of having areas which encourage students to have play sports is a good idea, and it's one of the things of health and well-being that we're supposedly trying to enforce. So I think having a larger playing area is actually a very good thing. And lastly, are school places a planning reason, or is the distance to school a planning reason? I'd just like an opinion from our legal person.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we'll come back. That was the last question.
I'm sorry.
Just in respect of the lift, I believe that there is a lift proposed just over here. I can get that confirmed by the applicant, but as far as I was aware, this bit here is a lift.
Anything else?